So this month's haul is mostly split between death metal and traditional heavy metal, with a little bit of thrash and a little bit of post-metal in the mix as well. Some studio, some live, all fantastic. Stick around. First up is a reissue of the debut EP from American death metal band Frozen Soul. This is Encased in Ice, originally released in 2019, but now reissued in 2021 by Century Media Records. So the big difference between the original and this reissue are the 4 bonus tracks that have been added to it, and I'll go through those in a bit, of course. I want to talk about the vinyl variant first, though. It is 1 LP, 180-gram classic black with custom labels. We also have a single-sided poster here of the cover art, suitable for framing. Also very frozen, very cold. Also have an insert with full lyrics, as well as picture of the band, credits, and all of that. As for favorites on this one, I definitely dig some of the demo versions on here. I like the title track, as well as Merciless, and most especially the demo version of Crypt of Ice. Really amazing. I also love the bonus studio track, Tormented by Time, which was previously available as a flexi-disc single from Decibel Magazine back in 2020. As for the 3 bonus cover tunes, I probably dig Entombed's Morbid Devourment the most. I think it translates best to Frozen Soul's sound. Though their slower and grindy rendition of Slayer's Mandatory Suicide is pretty decent. And the cover of Mortician's Witch's Coven is, let's say, serviceable. And in case you missed it, I did talk about Frozen Soul's latest full-length album, Crypt of Ice, in last month's episode, so you should check that out if interested. I think overall this is a nice sampling of where the band was a few years ago, since I do feel that they've picked things up considerably with their full-length release. You also get some harder to find tracks on this one as well, which makes this EP worthwhile. If you dig Frozen Soul, you should already have this one. Next is the 10th studio album from American metalcore band Converge. This is Blood Moon 1, released in 2021 by Epitaph Records. Now, before you start throwing things at the screen, let me explain that this is a very unConverge album, to say the least. In fact, it is a collaboration between the band and singer-songwriter Chelsea Wolfe, with much of the musical tone here provided by her. Chelsea is a tough one to describe if you're not familiar with her work, but she mixes neo-folk and doom metal, gothic rock, and some haunting electronic elements in her music. And yes, even that doesn't tell you enough. My apologies to her fans, of which there are many, including me, by the way. So this collab came about in 2016 when Chelsea and Converge and some other friends of theirs united to perform live. This record is what transpired after that, but in a studio setting. Thing is, work actually began on this in 2019, but was delayed due to COVID. So we got it 2 years later. I did want to talk about the packaging for this one because it's pretty cool. It is a die-cut slipcase. You can see through to the other side. You just have to push it through here a little bit. So you get the actual jacket to the record here. Much the same artwork on the back. It is a gatefold, so you also get a nice picture of the band. Chelsea Wolfe's there, being awesome, as she often is. I want to talk about the variant, of course. It is 2 LP black, navy, neon, purple mix. It is limited to 4,000 copies and considered the indie exclusive version. Housed nicely in that full-color gatefold sleeve with that die-cut slip jacket. God, I love that. Pretty cool colors, too, on this one. We also have printed inner sleeves, some credits and lyrics and all of that. Cool picture there of the band. Since this is 2 LP, you get another one right here. Title of the band and the project. More credits. Another great picture on the reverse. You also get a poster. This is a 2-sided poster. One side has the same thematic artwork that you get on the cover of it. And then the back has something similar, but completely different. There you go. Of course, I do want to talk about some favorites on this one. My favorite song, without a doubt, is Tongues Playing Dead. You should check that one out first. There's also Lord of Liars, Daemon, and Blood Dawn. There's a music video for the track Blood Moon. You should watch that at the Epitaph Records YouTube channel. So yeah, it's still strange to put this out as a Converge album because that branding is massively misleading. I mean, folks who don't like Converge might just avoid this album because of that name, which is unfortunate. Still, others expecting Converge might be disappointed. So there's that in the name. But if you're looking for an album that covers a lot of musical ground, from gothic to post-metal to haunting ambiance to the downright avant-garde, then Blood Moon might be for you. Next up is the 5th studio album from American heavy metal band Haunt. This is Beautiful Distraction, released in 2021 by Church Recordings. You know, it is funny to think that this band has 14 releases out since its inception 5 years ago, I think it is. That is if you include singles and EPs, of course, but this is their 5th LP, which still seems like there should be more of these. I don't know. Have I ever mentioned that Haunt has put out a whole lot of music in a relatively short period of time? Because it's definitely true. Anyways, we still have some of that guitar and synth trade-off stuff we've gotten from previous efforts, so the synth does feel a little more prominent here, but without being overwhelming. Also getting some hints of US power metal influence here and there, which seems to be what's supplying much of the overall heaviness of this record, especially when you compare it to records before this. Of course, the vocal melodies here are locked into the Haunt template as always, and some folks might find them to be a bit samey as a result. If that doesn't bother you as an actual fan of the band, then you'll likely enjoy this, but to be fair, others who are unfamiliar with Haunt might find some of this record a tad monotonous. As for vinyl variant, it is 1 LP clear with black and red splatter, limited to 500 copies. Nice labels on the reverse. You also get an insert. Some cool artwork in theme with the jacket. Also full lyrics. And as always, some favorites. Definitely dig In Our Dreams, as well as Keeping Watch and Hearts on Fire. Now, if Hearts on Fire seems very familiar to you, it should be. This is a re-record of that track. It was originally on Mind Freeze, which is a killer Haunt album, by the way. You should definitely check that one out for sure. The other re-recorded track here is It's In My Hands. That was originally found on their second album, If Icarus Could Fly. Both redos fit well on the album, though I'm not quite sure why they were redone. I think the originals are decent as well. You know, why mess with something pretty much perfect? Anyways, Haunt does have a newer release out currently, such being Windows of Your Heart. I'm definitely looking to pick that one up in the future, and I'll probably discuss it here if I do get it. But I probably will. Anyways, as someone who has had most of this band's output, and still does, I dig this album, but I'm also keenly aware that some folks might be a tad impatient with Haunt's, let's say, rigid and occasionally predictable songwriting template. So perhaps that's something to keep in mind. But yeah, I dig it. Next is a second studio album from American death doom band Temple of Void. This is Lords of Death, released in 2017 by Shadow Kingdom Records. So a bit more death than doom here when compared to their first album, but there are still plenty of slow, oppressive moments of gloom, so no disappointments there. Also digging the increased intensity of the vocals from the previous record. I mean, this album is crushing on all levels. Definitely digging it. This killer opening instrumental track. It is called The Charnel Unearthing, and believe me, if they don't open every live set of theirs with this, then they should. It is just amazing. Plus, the way it just leads straight into Wretched Banquet is just masterful. Great stuff. Some nice change-ups here as well, including some acoustic passages, not to mention the moment of clean vocals in the track Graven Desires. I also feel the album benefits from the 37-minute runtime. It never overstays its welcome at any point and moves along perfectly. That's something I can obviously appreciate, as I've mentioned before. Should talk about the vinyl variant in here. It is 1 LP, splattered flesh-colored vinyl. It is limited to 400 copies. This variant is considered the third pressing of the album, which means there were others, of course. So if you don't like this one, you can find others. Fantastic. We also have an insert with full lyrics, as well as a cool collage of live shots of this band, which makes me want to see this band really badly, because I'm excited about Temple of Void, want to see them live. They got to be killer. Anyways, favorites on this one are A Watery Interment, The Gift, and Deceiver in the Shadows. You should check all three of those out. So the album is a little less doomy than their debut, but certainly plenty of atmosphere and pummeling riffs to go around. We're also hearing the beginnings of their branching out, which has also come to define the Temple of Void sound these days and differentiate it from former comparisons. There's definitely a lot to love about this record, so I would definitely say check it out. Next is a live compilation of hard rock bands recorded in 1982, although a couple of the tracks were taken from 1979 and 1980, if that isn't confusing enough. This is Reading Rock 82, released in, you guessed it, 1982 by Mean Records. So a quick background on the Reading Festival. It actually started out as the National Jazz Festival back in 1961, but changed to rock by the end of the decade. In the late 1970s, the festival started attracting more hard rock and heavy metal bands, which is the area I'm more interested in. Likely you are as well. Regarding the record, the sound quality is acceptable, but not exactly top-notch, which would likely be in the source recording, but I can't tell you for sure. Track selection works pretty well, though, and does make up for a bit of the sound. Vinyl variant on this one, as you would expect, is 2LP Classic Black. And since my friend Dave gave me this record, you can see that it says Dave's there on the B-side, but now it's Matt's. Fantastic. We also have a gatefold on this one, with some of the bands mentioned, photos of them as well, tracks and all of that. Favorites on this one, I have a few. I definitely dig Whitesnake here with the record opener, Walking in the Shadow of the Blues. Also Twisted Sister with Shoot 'Em Down, Budgie with Panzer Division Destroyed, and Chinatown with Caught on the Wrong Side. But especially the Twisted Sister track, of course. Many of you probably knew I would already say that. No music videos from this album, but there are some clips of performances from it available throughout YouTube, so do a search for that if you're interested. I gotta say, though, what sucks here is that the bands that are clearly missing from this comp, there are quite a few. They did play this festival in 1982, but they're just not here. Bands such as Diamond Head, Iron Maiden, Tigers of Pantang, Rock Goddess, Bow Wow, Praying Mantis, Y&T, a bunch of bands. A comp with those bands would have been amazing, perhaps even more amazing than this, but it's a decent comp. I would just like that comp a little bit more. I gotta say, though, out of all of these missing acts, it does blow my mind that Iron Maiden isn't on here. I mean, by all accounts I've read in my research from concert goers and the like, Iron Maiden was easily one of the most well-received and popular acts on the bill. At this point, they were touring the Number of the Beast, so it just seems like this huge omission here. I gotta say that. Also, I can't seem to find the existence of a Volume 2 for this comp, seeing as this one is referenced as Volume 1. If there is one out there, definitely let me know in the comments. There were plenty of other bands who played this festival, both mentioned and not mentioned, that I would like to hear live tunes from. Maybe they're on a Volume 2. I don't know. I want a Volume 2. Can you tell? Anywho, some classic bands in this one, many of which enjoyable, a few of which seem like filler. We'll definitely be digging this one out when I crave heavy music from this era. Decent comp. Next is one of two recent live albums from American death metal band Obituary. This is Slowly We Rot, Live and Rotting, released in 2022 by Relapse Records. So first and foremost, I've got to say it, John Tardy's signature death metal vocal style is still so solid after all of these years. Still vicious, still emotive, still in your face. Love it. Of course, as you could probably guess, this is Obituary performing their entire 1989 debut album, Slowly We Rot, in its entirety, in a live setting. Also, we do have 3/5 of that studio album's original lineup on board. Replacing Alan West and Daniel Tucker are Kenny Andrews and Terry Butler, respectively. Butler, of course, formerly of Death, and now of Inhuman Condition. So overall, pretty solid lineup. Also, it should be noted that this is live in the studio and likely a live stream event, as I do see scant mention of it being originally intended for video. Now, would I have preferred an actual live concert? Of course I would have, but the performance here is actually pretty stellar, so I guess I'm not complaining too much. Also, true to their usual live shows, Slowly We Rot ends the set, whereas on the studio album, it's track 4. Some album purists might have wanted the song in its original track order, but I feel like this works better live, and I'm sure fans of their live shows will appreciate this. It's a nice little detail. Anyways, vinyl variant on this one is 1LP custom half and half with splatter, limited to 240 copies. even if the hype sticker says 200. Not really sure why they rounded off the hype, but there it is. Also, we do have an insert, some credits here, and that amazing logo that we've all known and come to love throughout the years. There it is. I do have some favorites, of course. Till Death, great song. Also Intoxicated, which is probably my favorite Obituary song, or one of them. I do love one on the second album, maybe a little bit more. I think we'll get to that in the next episode. Hint, hint. Also, the title track, Slowly We Rot, is an amazing song, too. Great live version on this one. The digital version of the album does come with 3 live bonus tracks, Redneck Stomp, A Dying World, and they also do a cover of Celtic Frost's Dethroned Emperor. I'm okay with them not being on the vinyl, to be honest. I mean, realistically, I'm here for Slowly We Rot live, and that's exactly what I'm getting, so I'm pretty good with them not being here. So, a really killer performance here, and with decent production as well. Obituary fans should already have this one, so it's definitely well worth it. In fact, I did see Obituary live back in March of this year. Was psyched to hear a few of these tracks performed. So, I'm considering both this and the next live record as souvenirs of that show. Why not? Speaking of which, yes, there was another live album released simultaneously with this one, which is a concert performance of their second album in its entirety. And I'll be discussing that record in next month's Vinyl Haul, so check back in for that. Next up is a remixed and remastered edition of the debut studio album from American heavy metal band Dio. This is Holy Diver, originally released in 1983, but now reissued in 2022 by Warner Records. So you might be wondering right away, how does this record sound? I mean, it's a classic metal album remixed and remastered. Well, it sounds great. A real solid balance of instruments and vocals. I think Ronnie's voice here is particularly very, very clear. But the most noticeable difference here, and a real selling point for me, is that the tracks don't fade in or out at all. They simply begin or end as they would have in the recording studio. I didn't know that until a record store employee actually told me that, because I wasn't really going to get this right away. But once I heard that, I was basically too curious not to buy it. So trust me, you'll be surprised to hear how these classic songs you really thought you knew so well now start and finish very differently. It's pretty cool. I'm also catching some alternate takes spliced into the mix. For instance, a track you're familiar with might have an added word or a vocal gesture or a guitar flourish. Even an extended guitar solo you weren't expecting. Also, pretty cool. The album was remixed by Joe Barresi, who has produced, mixed, engineered, all of that. For such bands as Satyricon, Enslaved, Slipknot's on that list, many, many others as well, traversing a number of genres. Again, sounds great, and at times it's actually kind of heavier than the original. It looks like most of these remixes are longer than the originals too, which justifies the third side of the vinyl here for me. You might also notice that the cover art is both familiar and very different. This alternate artwork wasn't done by the original artist, but by Mark Sasso. He did the art for other Dio album covers, such as Killing the Dragon and Master of the Moon, as well as the last couple of Dio live albums. He's also done cover art for other metal bands. You should check out his self-named website for more on that. In fact, I do want to show you the gatefold as well. Right there. Pretty cool. And it does continue. If you look at the cover and the back, you can kind of see the continuation of the artwork there. As for vinyl, we've got 2 LP 180 gram classic black. There is an etching on the 4th side, or the 2nd side of record 2. A little difficult to show you in this light, but it's pretty cool. I guess you could trust me on that one. Nothing else in here, by the way. It is red, though. That's pretty nice. Favorites on this one, obviously Stand Up and Shout. Great song, great album opener. Don't Talk to Strangers and Shame on the Night. The last of which has the cleanest and punchiest bass guitar. It's amazing. You can really hear Jimmy Bain quite well. Love it. Even Rainbow in the Dark sounds utterly amazing. You got to hear this. I'll just keep saying that over and over again. Also, there's a bonus track at the end of the album, namely the B-side version of Evil Eyes, which sounds like a really good demo version, if it isn't a demo version. There's a music video available, as it has been for the last 40 years. It's for Rainbow in the Dark. You can check that out at the Rhino YouTube channel. So if you already have this album, there is enough here to differentiate it from the original to make any serious Dio fan get it. I'm super glad I bought it. And I definitely want to thank Sean at Paradise Found Records and Music in Boulder, Colorado for the tip-off. He was that record store employee who didn't talk me into buying it, but told me something about it that made me want to purchase it. So without him, probably wouldn't have gotten this. You should get this too. It's pretty cool. Next is the 16th studio album from American thrash legends Megadeth. This is The Sick, The Dying, and The Dead, released in 2022 by Universal Music Group. So let's get the gripes out of the way first. I don't feel that the title track is a particularly strong album opener. It's a decent track, but it just doesn't have that punch that I would expect for the start of a Megadeth record. I think opening with track 2, Life in Hell, would have kicked the album in a bit more effectively so. Regarding the track Night Stalkers, I'm really not bothered by the Ice-T cameo at this point. I was before, but I'm not now. I think because it's brief, admittedly, even though it's still unneeded. Overall, though, the track itself is really decent. I enjoy it quite a bit. But speaking of unneeded, the spoken word bits and similar dramatic intros throughout can go. I think they're totally excessive and occasionally cringy. Given that the vinyl alone is almost an hour long, I think chopping those would help bring that total runtime down a bit, and for the better. Also, not really excited about tracks such as Junkie and Celebutante, whether for musical or lyrical content, respectively. They're not the worst tracks ever from this band, but they're just not up to the caliber of the rest of the material here. Also, Mission to Mars, despite being a really decent track musically, has some truly stupid lyrics. Again, cringy as all hell. But despite all of that, we get some amazing lead work from Kiko throughout this album. He's definitely a major asset to this band, notably on this record. So please, no tragic plane crashes for this guy. Definitely keep him in this band. Vinyl variant for this one is 2LP, classic black. I didn't get the edition that is numbered and came with a 7-inch single, but that's out there if you want it. It's also the same edition that has a lenticular cover, which I thought about getting, but didn't want to pony up the extra $10 for it, so this is what I got instead. It also comes with a 4-page booklet. You get some credits here. You get some more credits on the other side, and if you're looking for lyrics, here they are, right where they should be. Also, we got a gatefold. Cool pictures of the 4 band members here. You'll see James Lomenzo here. He is not on this album. It is Steve DiGiorgio because they got Lomenzo after. Actually, Lomenzo is coming back. He used to be in Megadeth some years back and all of that. Let's go through some favorite tracks. Definitely Night Stalkers, as I mentioned before. Also Killing Time, Soldier On, and We'll Be Back. I think We'll Be Back, the album closer, is my very favorite song on here. Anyways, music videos for the tracks We'll Be Back, Night Stalkers, Soldier On, and the title track, which basically lines up with my favorites, more or less. You can watch each and every one of those videos at the Megadeth YouTube channel. I should mention that there are also 2 bonus tracks on the non-vinyl versions of this album, cover songs to be precise. They do a version of Police Truck by the Dead Kennedys, as well as Sammy Hagar's This Planet's on Fire, with Sammy guesting on the track. I gotta say, neither track is really necessary for the album, and I'm glad they aren't on the vinyl. Of course, I've rarely been a fan of cover tunes from this band, so that probably factors in here, to be honest. Also let you know, this one took me a number of listens to warm up to, but I ended up liking it more often than not, I would say. A couple of weak tracks and some annoying spoken parts aside, it's a good album. I mean, even as someone who liked their previous album, Dystopia, and I know some of you out there don't like that album, I do feel that this one might be a bit better, admittedly. We'll definitely be spinning this one a whole lot more. Of course, let me know in the comments which of these albums and bands you liked or disliked. That's pretty important too. Also, any music suggestions. Maybe you watched this video, maybe I mentioned someone or an album, and you're like, hey, I think Matt would really like this band or this record. Definitely put that in the comments, because I'd really love to hear from you guys, especially with suggestions on bands and albums. Pretty cool stuff. Anyways, if this is your first time tuning in, just to let you know, this is the Accusation Network, where each and every week I do videos on metal vinyl collecting. I also do videos on classic and modern metal in general. If that sounds like it's interesting, give this video a like, subscribe to this channel, of course, and share the video with some of your friends. Other than that, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.